Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, consciousness, and what it all means. Thank you so much for everybody who wrote in their listener ghost stories. I am so excited to share everybody's. I got a lot of responses. And if you have a ghost story to share, this is your chance. This is your chance to share your story about your connection with the other side. So either a loved one, synchronicities, a ghost story, whatever it is, please write it in and make sure that it's lengthier, because these ghost stories, as you know, are about 5 minutes. So want to make sure that we have about 5 minutes worth of your story. Today's might be a little shorter, but it was too ghosty to pass up. So, also, if you are wanting to share your story, please make sure to send it to team@dramyrobbins.com. And here is today's ghost story. I was starting to say that was too difficult to pass up, even though it's short. So here you go. I grew up next to a cemetery in an old town in New Hampshire. I've had paranormal experiences my entire life in that house. I still experience strange things today. There's one story that is different from all the rest. This story has completely changed my perception of the afterlife and guardian angels. To begin, I will go back to when I was 4 years old. One morning, I woke up and told my mom I saw a lady floating down the hallway in a white flowy dress. Not too long after this, my mother woke up in the middle of the night and felt the urge to check on me. As she peeked into my room, she saw a woman in a white dress floating towards my bed. I just want to say I have chills up and down my spine just as I read this. So, as the woman approached me, she floated up and above me and then disappeared through the wall. At the same time, I stirred and began talking in my sleep. My mother described the woman as middle-aged with a blonde bob hairstyle in a white flowy dress. Fast forward to January 2020. My husband and I were on a cruise. We sailed through horrible weather one night. The seas were extremely rough. The wind was so strong, we were told to stay inside and off the outer decks. The entire boat made these awful creaking sounds with every gigantic wave that slammed against the side of the boat. I could feel the strength of every wave as they tossed our boat around like a rag doll. We were at the mercy of the sea with nowhere to run and nothing to do but hope for the best. Finally, after a night of no sleep, we ventured out of our cabin the next morning to get breakfast. We were happy to see calm seas and the sun shining. It was a picture-perfect day. We went out to the upper deck where people are usually packed like sardines by the pool. At this moment, there wasn't a soul in sight. It was eerily quiet and peaceful. We headed across from one end of the deck to the opposite end. I was leading the way. My husband was following behind me. At one point, I turned my head to look behind me to say something to him. As I finished my sentence, I turned my head to look forward again. At that very moment, from the corner of my eye, I saw a woman standing directly to the left of me with a blonde bob and a flowy white beach dress. She had her back towards me, looking out at the ocean. She wasn't looking in my direction, and I was sure I was going to walk right into her. Instinctively, I stopped dead in my tracks and leaned back as if to avoid a collision. But as I turned my head in her direction to say excuse me, there was no one there. I was startled and frantically looked around the deck for this woman. I was shocked to see no one else around except for my husband. My husband had not seen her. A single soul. Confused, I continued on to breakfast. I just couldn't get this experience out of my head for weeks until I made the connection. The woman was middle-aged, had a blonde bob hairstyle, and was wearing a white flowy dress, just like the woman my mother and I saw when I was 4. I can still see the profile of her face as she looked out into the ocean. She looked peaceful, as if she was admiring the fact that we were safe and alive. Perhaps she was keeping us safe through that crazy storm that night. I still haven't been able to figure out who she is, but I'm convinced she's my guardian angel. No one will ever be able to convince me otherwise after this experience. Thank you so much for sharing this story. Well, thank you so much for reaching out. This is an incredible story. I will obviously be sharing this, but holy cow. I know when I first read the story, I was completely struck by it, and also just struck by the years that went by between 4 and however old this listener was. I'm assuming much old enough to be on a cruise alone with her husband. So, but I think it just speaks to how these experiences can show up for us in so many different times and places in our lives, and we have to be open to it. And so I think in just retelling this story, I hope you're all listening to that, and that it gives you hope too, that perhaps even if you've wanted to connect or haven't been able to, or had an experience but it hasn't happened again, that there is always possibility for magic to happen in your life. So thank you all so much for listening, and have a great day. Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.